I was away yesterday with multiple members of our church board, dreaming and planning and just trying to hear from God. It was a really great time up at Camp Kakwa. We had a beautiful view of the lake and decided to play beach volleyball together, which I'm still not sure if that was a good idea or not, because it was 5 guys. We have some women on our team, but they weren't able to join us. So the 6 of us decided to play beach volleyball. So if you can imagine 6 guys between the ages of like 31 and 60 or so, trying to be athletic. It's a wonderful reminder of exactly where you are in life. It will tell you the kind of athlete that you think you are versus the kind of athlete that you think you are. Right? Does that make any sense? I had the same experience last weekend because last week I got cajoled into being the coach for my son's soccer team. And I think I said something about that last week, but I had to do the first practice on Monday with the boys. And, you know, it's like you're trying to set temperature for them. And so they're coming into all the drills kind of like, you know, because it's their first soccer practice of the year. It's like, remember, guys, this is a competition. You have to fight football. You have to get in there. You have to dive. You have to do some things. So I spent about an hour trying to get them to, like, play with intensity. And then I went home and sat on the couch for 4 hours. Because once again, I was reminded that I'm a 43-year-old guy with a dad bod and not the athlete I have in my head. There are times in your life when your life will help you take stock of where you really are. It's probably better to take stock of where you are on your own then. Does that not make some sense? Right? That when we're trying to figure out exactly where we are, you can wait for life to teach you the lesson, but by the time they do that, it's probably too late. And your body's going to betray you, and you're going to spend 4 hours on the couch. It would probably be a good idea to check in about where we are on various parts of our life intentionally. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this morning, what I promised you last week is that we were going to try and start a journey where we could get some tools and take stock of where we are together. That was my big ask last week. Spend some time this week just thinking about your life as a follower of Jesus or your life as an explorer of Jesus, because I realize not everybody here is convinced, and that's okay. You are welcome to come as you are. We're happy that you're here this morning. But wherever you are in your spiritual journey, every once in a while, it's a good idea to stop and look around and get a sense of where we are. And in the journey to following Jesus, we're always comparing our life to the life and teachings of Jesus, right? It's actually not that complicated. You know, there are a bunch of stories recorded in Scripture about who Jesus was and why he came and what the people who came right after him did in response to his teaching and his life. And if you are here, then in some part, you are entering into a story in which you're comparing your life as it is to the life of Jesus. His invitation was really simple. Follow me. Follow me. That's it. The essence of Christianity in 2 words from Jesus. Follow me. And so we ask ourselves, if we're looking to take stock, how do we do that? What's the measurement? How did Jesus live? What guided his life? And for Jesus, this was answered really, really succinctly, because somebody came to him and said, "Teacher, of all the commandments, which is the most important?" And in every iteration of the gospel, the writers about Jesus' life answer the question the same way. In fact, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, almost exactly the same words. This is what Jesus said, the most important one. Answer Jesus, is this: "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. So love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength." For Jesus, being a Jewish man, of course, his primary focus on spirituality while he walked on earth were the teachings that were handed to him through the Jewish tradition. And what we've just read there is called the Shema. The Shema is a prayer that if you're a Jewish person, you recite at least every day. Perhaps multiple times a day. It is the easiest summary for understanding what the Jewish view of spiritual formation is. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Mind is actually added in the New Testament. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, where this is given to us for the first time, and where Jewish people would recite, the word mind doesn't come into play there. We'll explore why that was in a minute. So here's what I want to do this morning. As we are entering into this next season, as we're looking at what does it mean to actually walk the path of spiritual growth together, and where am I at today? This is where we start, and what we want to do is look at a few of the words that are here in Shema that should form and shape the way that we think about what Jesus is calling to. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. So let's just do it word for word. Hear seems fairly straightforward. In fact, all of these words that we're going to look at, you might in English just go, I already know what that means. But as is often the case, when words get translated from ancient languages to modern languages, we lose something in the translation. There was something that they understood about each one of these words and the nuance and the way that it was used that's really, really important. So hear. Here is how we get the actual name of the prayer. So the word in ancient Hebrew would have been Shema. Hear. Listen. But it's more than just sound waves going into your ear, right? Which is the basic idea of listening. You know, hearing sound waves come through the air, hit your eardrum, go in, and translate to language in your brain, right? This particular use of the word Shema is that you have to respond to what you hear. You have to listen and obey. So, this is like, parents, when you call your children for dinner. Julian, supper's ready. Okay, Mom. And everybody sits at the table. And 5 minutes later, Julian is not there. So, we will call out to him again, Julian, and he'll say, I heard you. No, you didn't hear me, because you're not here. I didn't mean for you just to hear the words coming out of my mouth, but to actually do what I asked you to do. Right? This is what God means when he says, hear, pay attention, listen to me, and do what I am asking you to do. There is no option from the perspective of Jesus to simply hear his words and go, that was nice, and not let it affect or change you. It's supposed to be something that calls you to attention and asks you to respond. You can't say, I heard you, Dad, and not get up from where you were and come to where you were called. So hear, Israel, the Lord your God is one. You are to love the Lord your God. This is, the Bible, as you might know, has several words in the original languages, both Hebrew and Greek, that get translated into this one English word called love. This particular one, ahava, is not just a feeling. It's not just talking about love as it relates to our feelings, our emotions, although that's part of it, okay? Again, and you're going to see a theme here in all of these words, ahava is feelings with action. Feelings with action. So our attention and our feelings need to both be driven by actions. It's not okay to say, I love God, and just mean that my heart is affected in his direction. The love that God is calling us to, looking for, and has demonstrated for us in the coming action of Jesus Christ leaving heaven and becoming a man and walking among us is that love translates into action. So if we're following Jesus, it's not just that God, understand this. This is the great beauty, or at least one of them, of the Christian faith, that God is not aloof somewhere saying, I love you, good luck. That's not this God. This God, Jesus Christ, is the one who left where he was to come here and solve a problem that you and I are incapable of solving on our own. He didn't just give us the wisdom for it. He didn't just tell us he's in favor of us. He actually came to do it for us. And the love of Christ is the love that we imitate. So when God calls us to love him, it is not just with an affected feeling sitting on our couch saying, wow, I love God. It is a feeling that gets us up onto our feet to participate in the story and calling that God has given you as an individual and me as an individual and his church as a local and global movement. Our attention and feelings need to be driven by actions. How much? That's what the next words tell us about. Heart, the word lev. See, heart meant something different to the Jewish people than it means to you and I. Heart is the source of not just physical life, right? Like we get that. Our heart beats, it moves blood. We're allowed to live. If our heart stops for more than a couple of seconds, you're dead. And that's it. We get that. We understand that. We understand that part, right? But in the ancient Hebrew world, it wasn't just the source of your physical life, your literal life force and blood moving through your veins. It was the source of your thoughts. And all of the intelligence that you had flowed out of your heart. All of your emotions, your love, the way that you process the world emotionally flowed out of your heart. And all your reason and all your choices, they were driven, motivated, and controlled by your heart. So in other words, when God says, "Hear, Israel, that I am one and you are to love me with all your heart," it's like with every piece of your faculties, love me. It was a call to devote one's whole life to the pursuit of loving God. Our soul, our nephesh, okay, actually, nephesh is a word for throat at its most basic meaning. But the meaning behind the meaning in this case is that everything that comes into your body has to go through your throat. It isn't, and this is an interesting thing that you can go do more research on your own. It doesn't refer to a spiritual thing trapped inside your fleshly cage that's released on death and floats up to heaven. The Hebrew people had no concept of soul that way. That version of soul actually comes out of Greek philosophy and made its way into our Christian thinking sometime after Jesus lived and sometime during the writing of the New Testament. I'm not saying it doesn't work that way because I haven't actually seen somebody's soul float or do anything like that. I am saying that sometimes we have interesting ideas that come from other places, but in this particular case, what soul means is it's talking about the totality of a person. So if everything, get this, everything enters through your throat, then when it's used to refer to a person, it's talking about the totality of the human being. Not a spiritual essence trapped in us. Your whole physical being. So if the heart is the location of all your motivations, all your feelings, right? It's not just your feelings and motivations and thinking that needs to be dedicated to God. It's the whole thing, the whole package, the entire nephesh, the whole soul, the everything of who you are, pointed in the direction of God. Mind is included in the New Testament, but not in the Old Testament. We think that that was probably an addition because the audience for the New Testament writings mostly is Greek readers. And so mind is included to make the connection that some of those readers wouldn't have gotten, that heart meant something else. They didn't have a whole bunch of commentaries and Google and the internet and Logos and all these things that pastors have at their disposal now to teach them what these words kind of meant behind the meaning. So on occasion in the New Testament, when the writers were going, they're like, I want you to get this, that it's not just your feelings that I'm asking for, and it's not just your body that I'm asking for, it's all your mental faculties as well. Because, of course, in Greek culture, mental faculties were really important. The Greeks hung their hat, their societal hat, on their logic and their thinking and their philosophy. So in the New Testament, we include mind. It doesn't have a second meaning because it wasn't from that original language. But strength does. Me'od, a very strange word to say. And again, doesn't mean, your ability to power lift needs to be dedicated to Jesus, okay? It doesn't mean your muscles dedicated to Jesus, the thing that we think strength means in our dialect. In this particular case, that word is like a multiplier. It's like a power-up for other words that come before it, okay? If you're a video game person, Ma'ud is Mario's mushroom, right? He eats the mushroom, he becomes Super Mario. It's like extra Mario. It's like more Mario, right? It's a multiplier. It's a power-up. And it's saying, like, to the degree that you get that I'm asking you for all of your faculties and all of your being and all of your attention, like, multiply it. Multiply it again. It's not just what you think you can give. It's even more than that. This was the Hebrew concept of spiritual formation, that our life is a calling by God to dedicate everything to Him. That's the call. That's the direction. That's the purpose of our existence as it relates to God. But Jesus made two major edits, two major additions to Shema that are very important for us to know, which is why we don't really refer to it that way. We usually call it, the greatest commandment. Or in the case of one of my favorite theologians, Scott McKnight, he wrote a whole book called The Jesus Creed. If you want to dive into this from a deep level, I would recommend you get that book, Scott McKnight's The Jesus Creed, because Jesus did two really important things. Now, one, you kind of have to know the stories of Jesus to see that it can be applied here. So let's talk about one of the stories that I think solves this problem for us, because Jesus came to a man. Do you remember this? A man who is grieving his father's death, and he gave him the invitation to follow me. In other words, be my disciple, come with me, learn from me, model me, mimic me, do the path of spiritual formation with me. And the man said, I would love to, Jesus, but just let me bury my father. Now, there's something really important to understand about what that man said when he said, let me bury my father. Okay, what he asked for was time to fulfill what the Torah asked him to do as a son who was showing honor to his father. And here's what happened. See, when death first occurred, a person was wrapped and placed in a tomb. We know this because we read it in the story of Jesus' death and resurrection, right? Jesus dies, he's wrapped, he's put in the tomb. The women come afterwards. The stone is rolled away. Jesus isn't there. We've heard this part of it before. What's happening in the life of the family during that is that everybody is mourning. They enter a 7-day period of mourning, okay? So, we can probably assume that when Jesus encounters this man, that he's gone through the first stage of what's supposed to happen in honoring your father after death. Wrap him up, put him in a tomb. Okay? Because what happens after the family comes out of mourning, they leave the body where it is till it decomposes and decays to the point that only bones are left. Okay? They give it about a year. And then at the end of that year, they come back, they collect the bones, they put them in a box, and they bury them. So there's a second phase, and we can easily assume because, look, the family in mourning would not have been out of their house, more than likely. More than likely, the direct family of that person would have been staying together and doing the 7 days of mourning as the law required. But after that, they would have gone about their business until the father was ready to be moved from the tomb, put in the box, and buried underground. So when the man says, "Let me bury my father," we're talking about a period of time that could have been as long as 1 year minus a week. Jesus, give me time to do what the law says. And Jesus said something that seems so harsh when you read it. Let the dead bury their own dead. You come follow me. What Jesus meant in that moment was that the Torah and following the law is no longer your standard. Come follow me. I'm replacing Torah law. And so when Jesus adds this second part to the greatest commandment, love the Lord your God, yes, and the second is like the first. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus asserts that he has the right to change the greatest commandment. That now when we hear this commandment from him, we have heard that commandment from God himself. And so, not only is it a second commandment, but it's a recalibration, because God the Father and Jesus are one, but to those people, they didn't have this concept yet. So it was astounding for them, for Jesus to say, I can change, modify, and add to the greatest commandment. The second is like the first. Love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, with everything I asked you for in Shema, I'm asking you to put the same attention into the love and care of your fellow human beings. And what does that mean for us? It means a couple of things. First of all, that as we come to Christ, we should know it's not like just a casual thing. Like, this is to Jesus the entirety of the human life. In the book of John, John says, I came to give you life, and life to the fullest. When Jesus asks for your life, and not just bits and pieces of it, not just the parts that are convenient, and not just the parts that you like to give away, but there's some stuff over here I kind of like to keep in control myself. Jesus is like, I have higher aspirations for you than you have for yourself. I have a life in mind for you that you don't know yet. But I want you to experience it. I want you to know it. I want you to have it while you're here. I want your human existence to be defined in the way that I would define it for you, because I designed it, and I made it, and I gave it to you, and I came and I died so that you could have it. So everything, trust me, it will be better for you than what you have imagined for yourself. It can't be just the thing we do when nothing else is available. It is an increasing trajectory of trying to learn how to give our heart, our soul, our mind, our strength over to Jesus in return for all the things that he wants to give back to you. The life that he has in mind for you, that he describes as not just life, but life in abundance. And I know if you're here right now, maybe I'm just like scaring the people who haven't made any decisions about Jesus away. It's like, I kind of like my life, Pastor Tim. Praise the Lord. Like, that is the testimony of some people who have chosen to constantly give their life away. Because God does bring improvement and healing and transformation into our lives. And as a church, what we want to do is continue to encourage you in that direction. And if it sounds daunting and intimidating, look, let me assure you, we're okay with where you are today. It's okay to be wherever you are on your spiritual journey. If you're not convinced, that's okay. Come anyway. If you're convinced but you're floundering a bit, great. Let's work together. If it feels like you're doing really well in your connection with God, guess what? It could get better. We all have growth to experience. And so what we're asking everybody to do as we come back into the fall is to just look in the mirror and ask yourself, how am I doing? And how can I keep growing? We want to be available and helpful in that regard, because I think there are an awful lot of people who feel like they want to grow, but sometimes just don't know how. This is where the evaluation can come into play. And so, part of what we've put together is an opportunity for each one of you to have a pathway to keep growing. And what we've decided to do is that each and every time we put a new series together, we have some steps in mind that you could take. Look, nobody is going to accost you. Nobody's going to put you in a headlock. Nobody's going to wrestle you to the ground to make you do it. We can't do that. You can lead a horse to water, but guess what? At some point, the drinking is up to them. But what we want to do is make sure that water is available. I know, I just called you all horses. Are you okay with that? It's cool. Horses are beautiful. They're strong and majestic. It's wonderful. What we want to do is make sure that life-giving refreshment that comes from God is constantly available to you, constantly in front of you, constantly offered to you, okay? So the thing that we would ask you to do today, we have this, you've heard us talk about it if you've been here. If you're relatively new, you may not have heard us talk about this very much. But attached to our website is a whole kit of tools designed to help you answer the question, how do I take another step? The first step is to take what the pathway material calls a spiritual fitness test, okay? This is you not waiting to go do your son's soccer game to find out that it was harder than you thought. This is you taking a proactive step in your spiritual life and saying, according to a few metrics, where am I at today? And our hope is that each and every person who comes to our church would take time to do it and take time to get engaged in some of these things. Because some of the conversations we have, this is the reality. We pick out series and we put things in front of you guys, and some of them are more relevant to individuals than others. The hard thing about discipleship is there's no one size fits all. But all we can do is help you understand where you might be today and what growth might look like for you. So some of you excel at knowing God. You thirst and hunger for Scripture. You love to read. You wake up early. You do all these things that you know you should do to be closer to God. But when it comes to like sharing our faith or maybe allowing somebody to poke at the parts of us that need refinement, like that's a bit uncomfortable. Some of us love to follow Jesus with the practical things in our life, but really struggle to do some of those spiritual discipline things. Wouldn't it be good to just have a sense of where you might be at? So here's what we're doing. For some of you, going online and signing up for something is like second nature now. And for some of you, the internet is still a grand mystery. And that's okay. Okay? Because what we're going to do, like, this is how you know we got serious about it, right? First of all, if you want to create an account and want to do a spiritual fitness test, several of the staff and some of our volunteers will be at the connection desk after the service. If you haven't done this yet, just come there with your phone, okay? Most of you have one. We will help you sign up. It takes like 3 minutes, and we can point you in the right direction, okay? From now on, you're going to be able to find somewhere in the foyer, we haven't totally decided yet, the printed versions of the materials for you to actually engage with on a monthly basis, okay? So if you just don't like the internet, you just don't love computers, that's not your thing, it's okay, great, no problem. We will print it out for you and have it available. There may be a small, modest fee for you to help us cover the cost of printing, but It'll be there, and we'll make it as accessible as humanly possible. Today, guys, look, this is what I'm asking for. First of all, I'm asking the worship team to come back up and join me. And second of all, I'm inviting you to take a few minutes. This is as practical as I can make it. You will take 10 minutes, maybe, to fill out this spiritual fitness assessment and just get a sense of where we are. Wouldn't it be great to know that all the people that you're doing life with and coming to church with every week, that we are on a journey together, and that you can have conversations, and that you can move forward, and that you can grow, and maybe you'll find some people along the way that you want to meet with outside of Sunday morning. Or maybe we'll sit here and have a meal together after a service, and it'll just be natural to have some of these conversations. We want to weave it in and out of the life of our church. So today is just a really simple invitation. Come and find out where you are in relation to some of these things that God puts in front of us and says, I want to help you. I want you to grow. I know it's costly. I know I'm asking for a lot, but I promise you, what he offers in return is so much greater. Let's stand and sing together.